it's not just silver, right? And and those other metals are, we call them precious, but they're industrial metals. So maybe there's something else going on here. Maybe there's something economic. Maybe it's sustainable. Maybe this is actually good in the sense, good specifically for silver, in that if it's getting an industrial tailwind that gold doesn't enjoy, and, I don't think it's going to happen, but let's say there's peace in the trade war, there's peace in Ukraine, there's peace in the Middle East, and the safe haven demand for gold goes down. Well, guess what? The industrial demand for silver, if that's soaring at the time, silver could be your better bet than gold. So again, I'm not making a bear case for silver. I'm
Right.
just telling people, you can't say, woohoo, it got close to 37,
Yeah.
so it's off to
Yeah.
$50 from here.
Silver has emerged as one of 2025's standout performers in the commodities market, climbing by 7.85% in June alone and delivering an impressive year-to-date gain of approximately 24.5%. This sustained rally has elevated silver to levels not seen since 2012, with prices recently crossing the $37 per ounce threshold. Market analysts attribute this momentum to a combination of geopolitical tensions, particularly the escalating Israel-Iran conflict, and growing macroeconomic uncertainty, both of which are reinforcing silver's reputation as a safe haven asset. Although silver remains below its historical peak of nearly $50 reached in 2011, technical forecasts suggest that the $40 to $42 range could be the next resistance zone, especially if geopolitical instability intensifies or monetary policy further weakens confidence in fiat systems. Veteran financial analyst and publisher Lobo Tiggre has long underscored the importance of silver in uncertain times, highlighting its recurring role as a financial fallback when traditional assets become unreliable. Drawing from personal experience, Tiggre has noted that during past periods of financial stress, physical silver provided both a psychological and economic lifeline for those cut off from income or credit. He emphasizes that silver tends to regain attention when market volatility increases or when inflationary concerns grow. With growing skepticism towards central bank credibility and the rising likelihood of structural fiscal imbalances, more investors are now revisiting silver not only as a speculative opportunity, but also as a strategic reserve. Beyond its appeal as a hedge, silver's practical advantages over gold are becoming more relevant to everyday investors. Unlike gold, which often requires large capital commitments and may be difficult to liquidate in smaller quantities, silver offers greater flexibility due to its lower unit cost and divisibility. This makes it particularly suitable for those seeking liquidity and adaptability in times of financial stress. As inflation persists and traditional monetary tools appear increasingly ineffective, silver's role as both an industrial metal and a financial safeguard is growing more critical. Analysts project that its upward trajectory could continue through the second half of 2025, supported by rising demand, constrained supply, and a broader revaluation of tangible assets in an unstable global financial system. Now, we present the clips from Lobo's interview. Before we continue to discuss this, please subscribe to our channel and activate the bell icon for timely updates. Thank you, and enjoy the video.
I was on my way to Costa Rica with a Winnebago full of kids, 5 of them, no, sorry, 3 at the time, 2 adults, 3 kids, bunch of bikes strapped on top, and then the job in Costa Rica disappeared while I was in Mexico. So I'm on my way there with my family, and suddenly no job, and had to do something, and I quickly wrote up a business plan, and I started believe it or not, an online journal. Here I am, full circle as a writer.
Wow.
But in the
Wow.
meantime, I had to feed my family. So I'm here in a foreign country with happily I speak the language, and I could have family to lean on or something like that, but nobody wants to do that. So I'm there, and I got to feed my kids, and I had literally like a briefcase full of my old coin collection. Now this included the Morgan dollars and the other silver I saved in the 70s, but it also included Mexican silver pesos that I had saved as a kid, as a coin collector. Remember, I started the story as a coin collector as a kid. So the really interesting part of this story to me was 2 things. One is I took the coins to a pawn shop or something like that, and I sold them for current nuevo pesos which I immediately took to the grocery store, literally bought food for my family that day. So I was able to keep my family fed while I worked up a plan B or a C to move forward after this like total rug pull, this financial rug pull that left me with like no cash in the middle of nowhere, right? Um, so that's that's real. Like when you talk about speculating on stocks versus the bullion, which is savings, which is an insurance policy, like that is the literal truth of my experience. I was able to feed my family when all else failed because I had physical savings. Now let's get back to the zeros. This is the fun part of the story.
Yeah.
The other
Yeah.
significant takeaway is the Mexican pesos that I sold at that pawn shop. I kept the Morgan dollars a little longer until I had to sell them, but I sold these pesos, and they were like from the 1950s. And at the time, these are coins, and they look kind of silvery, but they're pretty crappy coins. I don't know if they're half tin or something. They're very light, and they had a smidgen of silver in them, right? And in that time from the 1950s, I don't know how many times the Mexican government lopped zeros off the peso, but I think it was 3 or 4, and it multiplies each time you do it. So imagine if I had had paper pesos or pesos in a bank account over that, 50-year period. They would have been basically worthless, fractions of a penny or a Mexican centime or whatever, centavo. But instead, I had those pesos that had a smidgen of silver with them. And of course, so I take them down to the pawn shop, and the guy gives me, I kid you not, 1999 gives me 1 peso for each one. And it's not because the old peso is worth a peso. It's because that tiny bit of real money in there, that tiny bit of silver in there had enough value to be melted down. These were not mint condition. These were not something a coin collector would want. These were in circulation, roughed up, old, scratched up pesos. So he bought them for this silver for 1 peso. And that's the money I took to the store to feed my family with. I was an entrepreneur. I wrote a business plan. I circulated it
Wow.
to friends, and I got investors together, and I launched my own internet magazine. It was called doingfreedom.com. Rest in peace.
Wow.
And by
Wow.
the way, I basically issued bearer bonds to friends and anybody who knew me and was willing to invest in this business startup. And I told them, look, I don't know if it'll work. I can't promise I'll ever pay you back. If it works, I will pay you with interest. If it doesn't work, I promise whenever I can, some point, infinite claim in the future, I'll pay you back at least 50% of what you invest. And on that basis, people were willing to give me money to start this business. And the business worked circulation-wise a bit, but never financially. So in the end, we folded it, and I found all those people who invested with me. And by that time, I had other work, and I paid them back 100%. They didn't win any, but I made them whole, not adjusted for inflation. But I gave them back their money, except for this one guy, Jim. If you're out there, you gave me $100, 25 years ago. I'd love to give it back to you. I mean, I wasn't there, of course, but even back in the U.S., when they confiscated the gold, it was an executive order. And one day you woke up, and if you wanted to go to your bank to open your safety deposit box, there would be a policeman, an armed policeman, and a bank officer there with you. And if you had bullion in there, that became the property of the government. So if it can happen in the U.S., it can happen anywhere. Remember the Cyprus bail-ins, right? This isn't just ancient history. This isn't just third world countries or Mexico or something. If it can happen in the U.S., and if you can wake up overnight and to a drastically changed situation, then it can happen everywhere. And this is a lesson clearly I took to heart, right? Despite my Darth
Yeah, you
Silver
definitely
nickname and
did.
all that, right? It is absolutely, like engraved in my very soul now that I want physical savings that I can hold in my hand, right? As Doug likes to say, it's the financial long for which there is no short, right? There is no counterparty risk to the bullion. And I don't want it in a safety deposit box. It's something that, third palm tree to the left, that sort of thing. I control
Yeah.
directly, and I sleep better having that insurance in my own hands.
Silver's decisive move above the $37 threshold has become a focal point for analysts tracking momentum across the precious metals sector. The price action reflects more than technical breakout behavior. It underscores growing tension between physical demand and the limitations of the paper market infrastructure. According to Lobo Tiggre, the strain between the futures market and actual physical delivery is becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. With approximately 250 million ounces reportedly standing for delivery, nearly a third of global annual production, market participants are beginning to question the sustainability of current pricing structures. In Tiggre's view, this growing disparity suggests a broader shift may be underway, where traditional metrics fail to capture the emerging realities of physical scarcity. This reevaluation of silver comes at a time when broader monetary conditions appear to be shifting. With the Federal Reserve signaling a transition toward looser policy in response to economic fragility and geopolitical risk, historical patterns suggest that silver tends to outperform in environments marked by policy uncertainty and currency debasement, particularly when it begins from a relatively undervalued base. As investors reassess portfolio allocation strategies, silver's positioning is being viewed through a more strategic lens, one that acknowledges its potential for outsized returns should macro conditions continue to deteriorate. Lobo Tiggre reinforces this point, noting that the underlying dynamics shaping silver's trajectory today bear a resemblance to earlier bull cycles, albeit with arguably greater systemic pressure at play.
Though I'd say, so we haven't had a wake up in the morning experience in the U.S. since 1933. So not a lot of people with living memory of that in the U.S. But we did have the 70s. So a lot of older folks, or, I was a kid, but I do remember the 1970s. And I told you how, the jilting boyfriend experience when I came back to the U.S. and the dollar that I thought I could trust was being inflated away, that even a kid could understand that, right? So, there is living memory of at least high inflation and the dangers of trusting governments with your money. So that's not completely alien. But yes, this wake up in the morning kind of experience, there is a tendency to think, oh, that can't happen here. That only happens elsewhere. And look, this is dear audience. Okay, I'm not promising, disaster tomorrow. I'm not saying
Yes.
this is going to happen. But look, it's insurance. I'm not saying to sell everything and move to a cabin in Idaho or something, that didn't work out for the Weavers anyway. I'm saying it's insurance. And if you never have to use it, great. But don't you sleep better having the insurance? If you put a reasonable amount into physical savings, that if worst comes to worst, let me put it this way. My partner, COO, CFO, CTO, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, she was in Spain when the power went out recently.
Uh-huh.
Okay,
Yep.
so this isn't necessarily a financial stupidity, more like
That
energy
24-hour
stupidity.
blackout. Yep.
Well, so she's there, and it's like, she doesn't carry, she's a modern girl, she doesn't carry a lot of cash around. And even if you have cash, if the cash register isn't working at the store, you can't go to a restaurant that, there's no way to scan your card. You've got nothing. You're like, suddenly, heck, all I've got is a water bottle and it's half empty. And, you can't do commerce. You can't, you really, and okay, for the first hour or two, it was kind of funny. Come dinner time, they scrounge around, find some crackers and a can of tuna fish, candlelight. It's all fine. It's all funny. The next morning when the power still isn't on, and, your choices for breakfast are tap water and tap water, it's not so funny anymore. And that's the kind of thing, I mean, I think that kind of experience shows you the fragility of trusting these systems. And by the way, I'm going to piss off your audience here, Danielle. I'm not hostile to Bitcoin the way many gold bugs are, but it is still an electronic transfer system, right? So if the power goes out, guess what? Good luck trading your Bitcoin. No, really, it's on my memory stick, I promise, right? So
That was my number one question. Yeah.
there is a use case, even for maybe not Bitcoin maxis, but everybody else in the crypto world. There is a use case for analog money in some circumstances. So I think it would be prudent, even for hardcore crypto bros, to diversify, with a little bit of insurance and physical bullion. It's just like, what's the downside? Your Bitcoin maxi friends are going to make fun of you. Who cares? If the power goes out and you need more than half a bottle of water, you'll be glad to have something that somebody will recognize. if you walk into a 7-Eleven, despite these videos you see on YouTube, you walk into a 7-Eleven with a gold coin and you say, "Hell, I don't have, the power's out or whatever." There's a kid behind the counter. You say, "I'll give you this for a candy bar or some, protein bars or something." It'd have to be a pretty ignorant kid to not say, "Yeah, that's a good deal." When the power comes back, I can put the cash in the register myself and I'll keep this gold coin. I have, uh, I have not direct personal experience with this, but I know people who in times of trouble, even in Romania, have been able to take a US Gold
Yes.
Eagle coin down to a shop and they defaced it. They fucking drilled it to see that it wasn't tungsten inside, right? But they got the money they needed in an urgent situation, my friend did. So, there is something to be said for real money, physical money that you can hold in your hand that doesn't require a plug or the internet, and it doesn't have any counterparty risk. So I really think this is an important takeaway message, even if you live in the first world where
Yeah.
everything seems so clean and safe. I'm a bull. This whole story tells you how much I love silver, despite the Darth nicknames and all that. But we can't let what we want to be true blind us to what is actually happening. Now, I'm not making a bear case. Put away your rotten tomatoes for now. You can throw them later. I'm not making a bear case for silver. I'm just saying the last few times silver has it hit 34, slam down, 35, slam down, 36, 37. Who's to say that Mr. Slammy is retired? I can't tell you that. And I wouldn't believe anybody that told me they knew for sure that he has. The other aspect of this is, you know, people like hearing this, but silver's industrial side has become more and more important over recent years. We've seen many times where it correlates more with copper than with gold. I'm not saying that silver is no longer money. I'm just saying that you can't think of it as only money. It has this other side as well. And this breakout in silver, it's great. I'm long silver. I'm long silver stocks. I'm very happy to see this happening. But I'm also aware that platinum, palladium, even rhodium, who the hell knows what rhodium
Yeah.
even looks
I
like,
know.
right?
Look at rhodium. Yeah.
So it's not just silver, right? And and those other metals are, we call them precious, but they're industrial metals. So maybe there's something else going on here. Maybe there's something economic. Maybe it's sustainable. Maybe this is actually good in the sense, good specifically for silver, in that if it's getting an industrial tailwind that gold doesn't enjoy, and, if, I don't think it's going to happen, but let's say there's peace in the trade war, there's peace in Ukraine, there's peace in the Middle East, and the safe haven demand for gold goes down. Well, guess what? The industrial demand for silver, if that's soaring at the time, silver could be your better bet than gold. So again, I'm not making a bear case for silver. I'm
Right.
just telling people, you can't say, woohoo, it got close to
Yeah.
37, so it's off to
Yeah.
$50 from here. We don't know
Yeah.
that. You want to speculate on it? Fine. Do you want to bet the house on that and be homeless if you're wrong? I wouldn't go there personally.
Good old Mr. Slimy, Lobo. One day they'll reveal
It's not me,
themselves.
by the way. Don't blame me. I'm not Mr. Slammy. I'm just trying
Uh,
to call it like I see it.
The long-term technical landscape for both gold and silver has turned decisively bullish, marking the early stages of what appears to be a new macro-level uptrend. Gold's recent breakout from an inverted head and shoulders formation, nested within a broader ascending channel, is a significant development, historically associated with powerful, sustained rallies. This formation sets the stage for an extended bull cycle, with long-term projections pointing toward potential highs beyond the $4,000 threshold. Silver, meanwhile, is showing parallel momentum, appearing poised to challenge the $50 mark in what many analysts view as the beginning of an accelerated leg higher. This convergence of technical strength in both metals comes at a time when inflationary pressures, sovereign debt concerns, and geopolitical instability continue to reshape global capital flows. Gold is now entering price discovery mode, with current resistance near $3,500 acting as a potential launch point should it break convincingly. Silver, trading at a fraction of gold's value, offers asymmetric upside potential, especially for investors seeking leveraged exposure to the broader metals bull cycle. With both assets aligning on technical and macroeconomic fronts, the evolving environment suggests that the next chapter in the precious metals market may deliver some of the strongest gains seen in over a decade. That's it for today. Share your Lobo's analysis on gold and silver prices in the comments section below. If you find this video informative, please support and turn on notifications to stay informed about our latest videos. See you in the next video. Thanks for watching.